Hello, my friends, and welcome to PMP Exam Prep Pace and Reasoning, Part 2. This is all about hard questions. Use a timer, my friends, to get the most out of this exercise. I'll show you a question. I'll give you 1 minute, 15 seconds, thereabouts. I want you to answer the question to the best of your ability, and then I'll show you the answer. So let's jump straight into the first one. You are working with an Agile team which has envisioned 2 major releases. Both involve the same number of iterations. As the lead, you discover that a key stakeholder has unexpectedly pulled out of the project. This could potentially impact the project timeline and budget. What is the best course of action to take in response to this situation? I'll give you 1 minute and 15 seconds. Go for it. All right, my friends, I gave you a fair amount of time for this one. Being the first one, I wanted you to warm up. Let's jump into what the logic is. So look at the keywords. This could potentially impact the project, timeline, and budget. That is the key thing. So it's not enough for you to just update a document without paying attention to this piece I'm going to highlight here. Right here. See this? Let's make that a little bit softer. It could impact the project timeline and budget. So the best course of action in response to an unexpected withdrawal of a stakeholder where the timeline and budget could potentially be impacted is not to update the risk register. No, this is something that is happening, so it's not a risk. This is something that's happening right now. B says, update the project plan to account for the stakeholder's absence and revise schedule and budget accordingly. Well, you wouldn't update the plan. It would be more of a stakeholder register, even if you're going to update anything, right? C, update the stakeholder register. That's not bad. To reflect the stakeholder's departure. It says, and identify any new stakeholders that may need to be added. Well, that's something that should be done all the time. But is that the best option? Let's take a look at D. Submit a change request to formally document the stakeholder's withdrawal. So that's taken care of. It could be a really important stakeholder. We don't know, right? We don't know. But because it is going to impact the project timeline and budget, we could say, yeah, this has got to be something significant. It says, and seek approval for any necessary adjustments to the project plan, schedule, or budget. That will take care of the underlying piece. Therefore, the best option, my friends, is D. Here's some further clarity, the detailed logic. Go through it and try your best to understand why whatever you chose is either the right option or not. Here is your next question. Again, Let's take a look at the timer to get the most out of this. 1 minute, 15 seconds. As a project manager, you have identified a potential risk that could impact the project schedule. What is the best course of action to address this risk? I'll give you 1 minute, 15. Let's go for it. All right, my friends, the time on this one is up. So let's take a look at the rationalization. So think about it. You've identified a potential risk. I'm going to cut to the chase here and begin eliminating those that are bogus. So A, update the project plan to reflect the new risk and adjust the schedule accordingly. Well, that is presumptuous because we don't know if it will change the project management plan. So that would not be the first thing you do. Let's just keep that aside and go to B and see if B is better. B, create a change request to document the risk and seek approval for any necessary adjustments to the project plan, schedule, or budget. Okay, let's keep that in the back pocket as well. C, add the risk to the stakeholder register and communicate it to the relevant stakeholders. That has to go because we don't document a risk in a stakeholder register. D, conduct a risk assessment to determine likelihood and impact of the risk and develop a mitigation plan. So this is suggesting do qualitative risk analysis, that's likelihood and impact, and actually do plan risk responses, that's D. Now let's compare that to A. Update the project plan to reflect a new risk and adjust the schedule. This is a little bit presumptuous and also incorrect because we don't reflect risks in the project plan. It would be in the risk register. That would be the best place. So let's take a look at B. B says, create a change request to document the risk. Well, you don't need a change request to document a risk, right? You do need it to seek approval for any necessary adjustments, but you have to carry out an assessment to determine likelihood and impact. And then how about creating a plan that would take care of it, not being presumptuous, about schedule, budget. It could be a number of things. So the best option based on what we have is D. Okay, D is the best. Here's a rationalization. So my friends, as you can see from the expanded breakdown, the best option is option D. All right, let's move forward to our next question. As a project manager, you have identified an issue that could potentially impact the quality of the project deliverables. What is the best course of action to address this issue? I'll give you 1 minute and 15 seconds, thereabouts. Let's go. All right, our time is up. Let's take a look at what the answer could be through the process of elimination again. So it says, you've identified an issue that could potentially impact the quality of project deliverables. A, conduct a root cause analysis to determine the underlying causes of the issue and develop a corrective action plan to address them. Doesn't sound bad. Let's take a look at B. Update the project plan to reflect the issue and adjust the timeline and budget accordingly. This says it would affect the quality. And again, you typically don't reflect issues just like that in a project plan. It should be in an issue log. So we're going to cancel B. Let's take a look at C. Create a change request to formally document the issue in the risk log. Well, we don't document issues in a risk log. It should be in an issue log. So we're going to go ahead and cancel that right off the bat. And D, communicate the issue to the project team and stakeholders and seek their input and recommendations for how to address it. Now, while this sounds plausible, A is more conclusive in that you are conducting an RCA somehow, whether with all the team or some of the team, or whether you're capable to determine the underlying cause of the issue. So it's mentioning causes of the issue are being addressed and developing corrective action to actually address them. See, and that's why in this case, option A is actually the best one because it really addresses, what the root cause is. So we're going to cancel D and we're going to go with A. A is the correct answer. Okay. This is part of the logic that you need to think about when you're answering such a question. Okay, let's take a look. And this further expands on what we looked at. Okay, all right. Let's move on to the very next question. I hope you're finding value from these. If you are, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you'll be notified when more questions become available. Number 4, as a project manager, you have discovered an issue that could potentially impact the safety of the project team. What is the best course of action to address this issue? I'll give you a minute, 15 seconds as usual. All right, our time is up, and let's take a look at these questions. So, taking a look at the options. So what is the best course of action to address the issue? A, halt all work on the project until the issue can be thoroughly investigated and resolved. So when we say all work, we're talking about all work. We're talking about paperwork. We're talking about administrative work. We're talking about procurement. You're talking about work on site. That may not be the best thing to do immediately, but let's take a look at B and see if B is better than A. B says, immediately notify the relevant stakeholders, including senior management and regulatory authorities, of the issue. It's not a bad thing to do because we need to escalate things that could affect safety. That is very important. So halting all work, though it sounds noble, is not the best thing to do. Even better is alerting people, and they can take the necessary steps they need on a localized basis. C says, conduct a risk assessment to determine the likelihood and potential impact of the risk on the project team and develop a mitigation plan to address any potential risks. Well, this is not a potential risk. It says an issue, and therefore C has to go. D says, create a change request to formally document the issue and seek approval for any necessary adjustments to the project plan, schedule, or budget. D is not bad, but it would not come first. So the best course of action is to notify those involved and then do an RCA and root cause analysis and determine what would fix it. But that wouldn't be the first thing to do. Okay. So my friends, here is some further detail about this. Let's clear those markings and let's take a look. And there you have it. The best option is option B. Okay. Immediately notify relevant stakeholders. Okay. Halting all the work on the project may be necessary in some cases, but it should only be done after notifying relevant stakeholders and receiving their input, recommendations, so on and so forth. All right, let's take a look at question 5. As a project manager, you have been assigned to manage a complex project with multiple stakeholders, including internal and external teams. What is the best approach to communicate project updates and status reports to stakeholders? I'll give you a minute 15. All right, my friends, our time is just about up for this one, so let's take a look. All right, so what is the best approach to communicate? Professor Emeritus Albert Mehrabian, he gave us the 55-38-7. So, when you're communicating, it's always going to be in favor of body language, and that's 55%. So A, create a detailed project report with all project updates and share it with all stakeholders. Well, the question already talks about status report. So you sharing it by email does nothing to amplify the importance, the relevance, or explain it. So that is not the best option. We're going to get rid of A. B, schedule regular meetings with stakeholders to discuss project updates and status reports in person. In person is always preferred, or through video conferencing. Let's hold on to B. Let's look at C. Provide brief updates on the project's progress during team meetings and expect the stakeholders to follow up. No, that never happens. That never happens. And when it does, few and far between. We can't make that a one size fits all. D, share project updates and status reports through a project management software platform, allowing stakeholders to access the information in real time. They probably won't go over the information because they have other pressing matters. You better believe it. So we're going to cancel D. And the best option, my friends, is B. Yeah, it can be really difficult being a stakeholder. Just to review reports could be really hard. So if you can meet with a stakeholder face to face, walk them through, show them the most important things, you'll be doing them a huge, huge favor. They will like you for that. but don't just dump a report and walk away. So the best answer is B, okay? The best approach is to communicate face to face, video, conferencing, or face to face, all right? Go through the content on the screen to get a better understanding. All right, let's take a look at a few more bonus easy questions to lift you up if you found any of those to be a little bit rough. A risk has been discovered. What should be done next? I want you to hit the pause button, take a best guess. I'm going to show you the answer very shortly because these are very, very straightforward. All right. So if a risk has been discovered, you wouldn't do A. You wouldn't do A immediately, right? That would not be something you would do next. It wouldn't be the issue log because issues are real problems happening now. A risk is a problem that could happen, right? And it wouldn't be to update the quality management plan because that would be presumptuous. So D, follow the recommended process for risks. That's the safest and that's the best answer, okay? All right, here's another question. A risk has been discovered and captured. What should be done next? All right, hit the pause button if you need more time. For this one, if a risk has been discovered, you wouldn't update the stakeholder register because they're not connected in that sense. Update the issue log. Again, it's a risk, not an issue. So we'll cancel B. C, categorization, scoring, and prioritization. Well, that's code for qualitative risk analysis. Well, that makes sense because you do that after identifying risks. D, plan risk management, you would do that before identifying the risk. So the best answer is C, categorization, scoring, and prioritization of the risk. Okay, next question. An issue has been discovered. What should be done next? So this kind of goes over the framework of what we've been looking at for the past few minutes, makes it easier. All right, hit the pause button if you need more time. So an issue has been discovered. The first thing to do would not be A, that's kind of like a bonus giveaway, right? B, update the issue log and follow the process for issue resolution. Not bad because it clearly says it's an issue. So it wouldn't be anything to do with risks here. And therefore the best option is B. All right, that's why the answer is B, my friends. Let's move on to the next one. A new stakeholder has joined the project. What should the PM do first? Okay, hit the pause button if you need more time. I'll show the answer shortly. All right, let's start from D. Update the lessons learned register. There's no reason to do that, except the question clearly says you've learned something. C, create a project communications plan. That's kind of wonky. You should already have a plan in place. B, update the stakeholder management plan. It's not a bad thing to do, but it wouldn't come first. The best thing to do first is to update the stakeholder register with the new stakeholders information. All right, and therefore the best answer is A. Okay, my friends, here is your final one. John is using a compromising technique to resolve conflict. What does this describe? All right, hit the pause button if you need more time. 3, 2, and 1. All right, so taking a look at the options, my friend, it would not be smooth or accommodate. Those are the same thing. But compromise is not collaborate, it's reconcile. Look at PMBOK 6 around page 349 for clarity. I'm not sure where that is in other PMBOK guides, but it's an important topic you do need to know and understand the little nuances. All right. And if you're getting ready for your exam and you're stuck and you need help, you need attention, you need to get out of a stuck state, go on down to hpmexam.com because we have short half-day boot camps, where we boot you into shape, we get you in ship shape and ready for the PMP exam. This is great for people who have been on the train tracks for a long time, trying to get certified, but are unable to do so. All right, go on to hpmexam.com, sign up for the next meeting that's happening, and it'll be a pleasure to see you in the classroom. All right, if you've got any questions, shoot them to us or put them in the comments below. I wish you all the very best. Hope you found this to be useful. Again, remember, hit like, subscribe, and share. Talk to you soon.